Actually, she wrote 4.
No, don't let me bother you. Thank you very much for coming today. This is, I don't know, we're trying to figure out like 550 town hall meetings that I've done over the years, and the reason to have them is to listen to you folks. It's not for me to stand up here and give speeches or anything like that, but with our form of government as representational, we need to hear from you so that we can go back to Washington in September 9th. We're back in session again, and to take your thoughts and ideas back there with us. We kind of had a theme set out originally talking about identity theft, and that's something that's become a very, very big issue with a lot of folks. Michelle Mustang here, who works in my office in Des Moines, her mother just a few weeks ago had hip surgery, and while she was recuperating, someone charged $7,000 worth of stuff on her credit card in Pennsylvania. So it could hardly be in Pennsylvania at the time, but it's really an example of the problem we have, and I'm very concerned going forward with, like with the health care bill, there's going to be a way now for a lot of folks contacting citizens, pretense of we need your information to sign up for health care and the new, all this kind of thing that certainly is not honest, but we just need to address it. The penalties are not very strong. So any input or stories that you have or people that you know that have been affected, we'd like to hear about that. But this meeting is wide open on any subject, obviously. Let me just say, when we going into this fall, and I'm fighting a cold, I'm sorry, but we'll have some big decisions to make. First, the Farm Bill is pending out there. The end of September, we get to the end, the fiscal year ends. The Senate has not done any of their appropriation bills. The House has done 4 off the floor of the House. So when we get to the end of September, none of these things are done. We end up in a situation that, like it has been, what we call a continuing resolution, which just continues to fund the government at current levels. That would also have a sequester in it yet. But it's just not the way we should be governing, because you cannot prioritize, put money into things that actually need to be funded, and cut things that are either duplicate other efforts or programs, and certainly there's savings to be had there, and that's what we need to look at. But unfortunately, it looks like we're going to end up at the end of September, nothing being resolved. Another continuing resolution, and then we get into the debt ceiling, which will probably hit and come to a point around the 1st of November, or maybe possibly stretch it out to mid-November, and that's where hopefully there'll be some kind of an agreement with the President, with the Senate, and the House as to funding levels going forward. If hopefully it's going to be very difficult, but a large agreement would have tax reform in it, would address some of the mandatory or entitlement spending that's in the budget. When you look at the overall federal budget, about $3.8 trillion of spending here, 2/3 of it is mandatory or entitlement spending, plus about $250 billion of interest on the national debt, which we have to pay first, and then the mandatory spending. The discretionary portion of the budget, which includes defense, is about 1/3 of the budget. That has already been cut about $100 billion in the last 2.5 years. We're not going to ever balance the budget cutting discretionary spending. We have to address the long-term driver of the debt, which is the mandatory side. We've got about 10,000 baby boomers like myself signing up for Social Security and Medicare every day. 70,000 a week. This is going to go on for 20 years. It's just simply is not sustainable as it is. There's not, first of all, there's no money in the trust fund, but also just if we cashed in the treasury bills that are in the trust funds, that'll run out in about 20 years, and then you have to have dramatic cuts in benefits or massive tax increases. So anyway, that needs to be addressed if we're ever going to get control of our budget, and hopefully there'll be some type of resolution to that. But we'll see. Anyway, I'm here to listen. I've talked way too long already, okay? We can stay here an hour, we can, whatever you folks want to do. So. Yes, sir.
Congressman, my name's Ed Wright. I farm north of Guthrie Center. And first I want to thank you for coming today. I know this is kind of a new territory for
I
the
love it.
district.
Beautiful country.
Thank you. And I also want to thank you. I've written a few times regarding your activities to protect my Second Amendment rights, and I thank you for your efforts in that. And I certainly look forward to more. I'd like to bring to your attention an effort I'd like to request your help on in protecting my Fourth Amendment rights. This relates to an episode a few years ago involving the on-farm energy production survey. Apparently it was an extension of the ag census, whereby it was demanded of me, not requested, but demanded under penalty of law, that I disclose particulars about solar energy panels that I bought and paid for with my own money and constructed with my own energy. I'm a former electrical engineer. And I find it very offensive that the Secretary of Agriculture apparently has been given the authority to demand, under penalty of law, an answer to any question he chooses to ask, except one pertaining to practice of religion. And I've included a section of Title VII U.S. Code that authorizes that.
Okay.
I've made this request of both of our senators and previously of Congressman King, and would sure welcome your support for some action, either sponsorship or support for a bill that would remove this authority.
Okay. If you want to voluntarily give information, that's one thing, but you should not be required to.
I agree, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes.
Well, you were talking about stories about fraud. I don't know what this was intended to be, but a couple or 3 months ago, I fell. I broke some ribs. I never went into the emergency room. I went into the doctor, the clinic. So I didn't go to the emergency room. They did do x-rays. So this is like 2 or 3 days later when the phone rings. And the person on the other end said, I understand that someone in your household fell recently, and then they were to tell me that it had already been paid for, but some kind of an alert system, and it's already been paid for, so it's et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I said not interested and hung up. But is it possible they got found out that I had fallen? My son said, no, that was just their come on.
Well, they must. I wouldn't know how, but I would also. Michelle can't tell you how they knew what her mother's maiden name, her mother's maiden name was.
That's spooky.
Well, it is. Was there anything in the paper or anything about your fall?
No. And I mean, I don't know what the idea behind it was anyway, whether how they were gonna get money out of Medicare or something to pay for this system, I don't know.
Is this like if you fall and push the button and you get warning?
Sir, I'm not really sure that it's concerning maybe her ribs having fall. I probably had 6 calls in the last, probably once a week. It's a call and they call, and I don't get into it, except once I asked some questions and I realized it was not a person on the other, they have their spiel. But they're saying, you have a prepaid medical package to arrive at your door. And then they want to try and get, and I don't know what the point is, because I don't go that far. But I'll just, most of the time, I listen long enough to realize what they're doing. But I probably have had 6 calls, and I don't know why they keep calling back.
I wonder if you went through it, they'd start asking personal information and.
Probably, if I kept, but sometimes I went pretty far, but the one time I did go and had some questions, then I realized, they just kept talking, see, now either they kept talking or it's a recording. I mean, it's hard to tell, you know. Anyway, so there is things around, and it could just be by chance that, because it sounds kinda, they just
Sounds
say,
like your
it's
calls,
already
too.
paid for, they said, and
Yeah,
they
this
wanna
was
get your
already
address to
paid for.
deliver it and all that, so,
I would guess if you would've gone through
It's
the
a
whole
scam
thing,
or
that
something.
they're fishing for
yeah.
information, yeah, as they call it, yes.
How do you suggest that you protect yourself against this identity theft?
How
What
do
should a
you-
person do?
Well, I mean,
what's
first
your
of all,
suggestion? I mean,
don't ever give anybody any personal information over the telephone. The only time you would ever do that is if you would call, you know who you're calling and who you're talking to.
okay,
I mean, if someone's calling something like that, they're gonna probably ask for your social security number and your, maybe, you know, possibly even checking account numbers and things like
Okay.
that, which they'll do, but.
Or
And then I would say report it is the most important thing. That's one of the things that
who
is
is
a big,
it?
well, that's the question, who do you report it to? I would, local law enforcement to start with,
Okay,
then depending upon, report it to us if you want to, and then we can go after whoever should be looking at it, but if it's, you know, has to do with social security or something like that, we need to know about it, but the first thing would be to call your local law enforcement.
What's your recourse if, I mean, we have direct deposit on our social security. If it doesn't show up, what's your recourse? Is there any way to get it? What has been stolen
That's
from
when
you?
you call us immediately. If something like that were to happen, we've got people that would investigate that immediately. And, you know, you would still, I don't think it would not show up, but it's a matter of them giving the information. We want to take the money that's put in there with social security, basically. But you get anything, let us know. I mean, that's Laura Hartman here. I don't know how many of you know Laura. She covers Guthrie, so works out of the Preston office. But that's, we need to hear about it so we can work on it, yeah.
I had something happen yesterday, it's never happened. On the internet, we travel a lot, we belong to Sam's Club, which is a travel insurance. And they had they'll come over the internet for insurance for your camper, blah, blah, blah. And I just got on the internet and checked to see how much it would cost. You know, I didn't send them anything. The next day, we got a call from Good Sam's, and they said they saw that we had checked. So when you get on the internet, whatever you click on, do they know, they can get your telephone number and everything?
Absolutely.
Really? I didn't know, that's the first time that's ever happened to me. That freaked me out.
No,
Wow.
that's,
Really?
I mean, these guys are a lot more technically
Yeah, wow.
informed than I am, but
Oh, my.
no, it's you know, like
Wow.
if you have an iPhone or something like
Yeah.
that, and you Google something, it'll pop up what, you know, in Iowa, what your insurance rates should be, and
Yeah?
car rates or something. You notice how it's all kind of personalized?
Oh,
No, there's a lot of information out there
oh, okay.
that they have access anytime you punch into it.
But I didn't send it. I just checked their
But they know that
information.
you're on the site,
They know you're
right?
on the
It's
site.
a tracking cookie everywhere you go on the website. It'll
Really?
go- And like when he said when you Google something, like if you Google used cars, then
Yeah.
you'll notice advertisements for used cars in your area will come up on your screen.
And so they've got your name and telephone number?
Well,
and
pretty
stuff?
much they have it from your
Wow.
internet service provider, yeah.
Holy
You
cow.
can go to Radio Shack, buy some stuff, drive around the neighborhood and listen in on every telephone conversation that is going on.
Wow,
And that's been happening for
yeah.
since the 70s when I was in the military. $100 worth of equipment and I know exactly what you're doing.
Really? Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
That's really scary.
Yeah.
Yes,
I know that stuff.
Is that cell phones or line phones?
Yes,
or-
line phones or cell phones. Yeah, I mean, it's simple things that you can go by. You've got to know what you're doing. And you can have two people in a vehicle, somebody sitting in the back seat with the stuff. You can drive around the neighborhood and any telephone, whether it's a cell phone or land phone, they can pick up what you're saying, listen in and record it. And this is not something that, you know, the government's been doing that I know of. This is just what we were taught in the military back in the 70s.
Well, the military, or the government's got a lot better.
Oh, yeah, true.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
Well, what are these things that we should know about Medicare? My husband and I are both old enough to have Medicare.
I'm on Medicare as of last month, too.
And some of these things we're finding that we thought we could get, like lift chairs and equipment for bathtubs and stools and things that Medicare don't pay for anymore. You have to pay for it yourself.
And that's, with the president's health care bill, there's about $700 billion of cuts in Medicare over the next 10 years. So I'm concerned about things that you're talking about. I'm probably even more concerned about access to nursing homes and home health care, because the cuts in that are very, very large. And you talk to your nursing home administrators, or you talk about people who provide home health care today, and that's what people want to stay in the home as long as they can, and if they can have those services. That's going to be cut dramatically. Also, there's some pilot programs going on right now. There's some people who get their oxygen at home, medical devices, things like that they need, dialysis equipment, things like that, that they currently have people, the health companies that provide that to them will service their oxygen machines and all that. Now they're doing it by competitive bidding. If you go over to Omaha and that region, which takes in Council Bluffs and several counties in this district, they no longer, companies are going out of business that provide the service. Now it's all mail order. So if your oxygen machine breaks, there's nobody there to fix it. And these are outfits, some of them are, that have bid on places like Omaha or from Florida. They have no intention of actually servicing anything. They lowball the bid, and then with the idea of supposedly selling that bid to somebody else. They have no financial assets or anything, they're just bidding on it. There are some huge problems coming with this reform. It's headed our way here. The president obviously delayed the business mandate, the individual mandate is going to be there, which is going to be, especially for young people, it's going to be a dramatic rate increase. Huge. Yeah.
Are we gonna get that stopped? I'm a county supervisor. We budget 6 months ahead for the next 12 months. So we're out there 18 months. We did it last January. We had no idea what fees was coming our way on the Affordable Health Care Act and nothing. Are you gonna get it stopped? I'm very disappointed you guys exempted your own employees,
No.
your staffers.
No.
You didn't.
No. Actually, the Grassley amendment included members of Congress and congressional staff, like these folks. The people that excluded themselves were the committee staff who wrote the bill. Excluded themselves.
That's wrong.
Well, it is wrong, absolutely. And I think, in my mind, everybody, if it's good for these folks and for us, it's good for everybody in government. In the executive branch, all the departments are exempt. It's just congressional, direct member, congressional staff that is included. So, and what the president just did was basically just say that the federal government is going to continue to pay the same share of the premium after we go into the exchanges that they have currently been paying. So there was no exemption for us or anything like that. That was Grassley's amendment. What needed to be clarified was whether the government would still make the contribution as an employee contribution. But now it's, I still think the people who wrote the bill exempting themselves is just outrageous. Are we going to get it stopped? We are going to, under the Financial Services Appropriation Bill, it's going to be on the floor next month. That bill, when it passes, will prohibit, like the Health and Human Services, from transferring hundreds of millions of dollars over to the IRS to hire more agents to enforce it. Basically defunds it. But the problem is the Senate will never pick that up. The President would never sign it. And what you're looking about is a shutdown of the government at the end of September. I was there back in '95 when we shut the government down for about 3 weeks. But remember, that was a partial shutdown. Defense was funded. A lot of different agencies were already funded. This time, nothing was funded. So you got people over in Afghanistan and their families at home here who will not get paid or get the support they need. I think it's a whole different dynamic. Everybody talks about shutdown, you know. I'm sorry, but we got people in the field fighting for us over there, and they've got a moral obligation to support them.
Will you be able to separate the two bills?
It won't fund one without the other. We will, no, I mean, I'm just telling you what is the reality of the situation. If you shut the government down, I don't think that's a sustainable position when you got people in the military.
You know, I
always
heard-
have people
But-
in the military. We're always at war.
I
Why do
heard-
people bluff?
A horrible statistic that, this may not be accurate, but it certainly gives you the idea, that with all the rate increases expected in people's health care, and the younger people their rate is greater than older people, yeah, young people work harder, faster, longer, because we old people need the money. In 5 years, the average family's insurance premium will be greater than their amount of income.
If it keeps it on I mean, they promised that you would be able to keep the policy you have, which is not true, that the premiums would be reduced $2,500 a family. They've actually gone up $3,000 a family. And when the individual mandate comes in, like you said, the younger folks, because they're going to be all in the pool, and you have guaranteed issue of policies no matter pre-existing conditions. And you have a lot of older uninsurable people today that are going to go into the exchanges. Those premiums are going to go
This isn't going to work.
2 to 3. I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, it's like Max Baucus, the Democrat from Montana, who helped write the bill, said it's a train wreck.
So what's going to happen?
I think there is some wavering on some of the people who are very supportive on the Democrat side that maybe will come around and help us with the repeal. Certainly, as far as this iPad board that's going to make all the medical decisions in Medicare, they're very, very scared of that, the medical device part of it, the home health care stuff. They're seeing what's going to happen with that, and they're really starting to run.
Realistically, one full board people. Do things kind of even change once you hit age 75?
I'm 78.
You know,
Well,
the charge of that board is to save money, however they determine to do it. So there's no, in the bill, there's no age or anything like that.
Quick question. For those that are brave enough to come out and hold the town meetings like you are, because there's a lot of people in the government that I don't think will, do you think when you go back, if you have enough of an outcry from the people and others get enough of an outcry from the people to stop Obamacare, anything would be done?
I think that they're getting very concerned about what's going to happen with the implementation of it. And I think you see it every day, more people backtracking. I mean, one of the biggest problems with it was totally a partisan bill. there was not one Republican voted for it in the Senate or the House. And when that happens, just go back historically, so what happened was they had the Christmas Eve Senate bill that had the Cornhusker kickback in the Louisiana Purchase and a special deal for Medicare for Florida. And just to buy votes for the bill, to try and get it out of the Senate. And at that time, they had 60 votes, and so they moved it. What happened then, shortly after, was when Scott Brown from Massachusetts won the special election, and so they didn't have 60 votes. So there was one thing that was very bipartisan in the House. We both sides agreed that what the Senate had passed was totally unworkable. But because they no longer had 60 votes, the House had passed exactly what the Senate passed. Or else it would have had to go to conference and then they'd never get it out again to get it to the president. So what happened was they took what everybody knew was an unworkable bill, passed it exactly as it was in the House, and went to the president. So this is why we're dealing with this. Everybody knew it wouldn't work. And that's why they were,
So why did they do it? What's Obama's motive? What are they trying to do?
I don't know what their motive is. I think the result is you're gonna see a clamoring from a lot of those folks to have the government totally take over healthcare. And in the long-term goal, that I think is what a lot of them want to do.
They are, they're trying to destroy the US. Then we're gonna really be in big trouble. It's time for a revolution, guys. I'm not kidding, I'm tired of this mess.
Yes.
Congressman, it seems that, two issues are in play with most legislation that finds its way through Congress these days, and for some time. One is the quick rush hustle. In a fever of emotionalism, bill after bill after bill is hustled through Congress without not only public publication, which is an abomination in and of itself, but without even the ability of the people who are going to vote on it to have read, let alone studied, the content of the bill. And the Obamacare bill might be the modern poster child for that. But it happens all the time. I suspect that's how the Secretary of Agriculture got the authority to ask or demand answers to those questions. And secondly, the legislation that is passed is of such a vague and general nature, and the particular rulemaking is then turned over to entrenched bureaucrats with not only partisan interest, but entrenched self-interest to write the rules to guard the hen house. How do we get away from this, short of a constitutional amendment for term limits and one topic, one bill, or mandatory read and publish and sign off on it all Sarbanes-Oxley? How do we do that? How do we get there?
The power of Congress is the power of the purse. And what is so frustrating to me, because the Senate hasn't done budgets for 3 years. When they did a budget this year, they had $1 trillion of new taxes in that. And the difference between our, on an annual basis, the House and Senate budgets, they spend $92 billion more than what the House did. We're never going to reconcile that. And so with the continuing resolution, what that does is empower the bureaucrats. Because their money just keeps coming and they can just thumb their nose at Congress basically. And you're seeing the arrogance in the IRS and different EPA that is writing rules on the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act that were never intended under those bills when they were originally passed. I honestly think we're getting to the point where we're going to have 4 branches of government, the executive, the legislative, judicial, and the bureaucratic branch. And they are just, we can't rein them in until we actually have a functioning system where we can take their money away from them or put funding prohibitions that they can't do certain activities.
What if we were to pass a law that topped out a bureaucrat's tenure at, say, 8, 10, 12 years maximum in public service above the bottom 5 pay grades? I mean, certainly Congress with the purse strings has the authority to write that term limit for the bureaucrat. And maybe that would free up some of the obligation to those hordes of hooligans in every DC building.
That's a very unique idea, and one that I probably would be passable in the House. Would be piled up on the stack of bills we've already passed in the Senate door over there, never to be looked at again.
Maybe progress. Or they become that fourth.
I am honestly concerned.
And accountable to no one.
The bureaucracy is, we all see it, is totally out of control. And there's no accountability anywhere. And the absolute, again, the arrogance that they have is just scary. It really is. And without, it's to their advantage and actually to the people who want to spend more money all the time to continue to have gridlock. Because that way you can't get at them. It's really frustrating.
Immigration, we did that back in the 80s, and we never filled the rest of the bill. Now we want to do it again, we'll make everybody legal, but we're not going to protect our border. What's the purpose?
Well, I mean, you should have been at the town meeting this morning. That was interesting, as usual. No, if we actually enforced the laws that are on the books today, and had done that since that was passed, we wouldn't have the problem we have today.
Exactly.
But it was citizenship first, and don't do the rest of it. And that's why we went from having 3 million people here undocumented then that got citizenship to 11 million now. And that's why the House is going to do a step-by-step approach. And number one will be border security, and until that's done, there won't be anything else. That and probably employer penalties and a system, e-verification system that actually works and has teeth in it. But those are the way the House is approaching it. We're not going to do the comprehensive Senate bill. I mean, that's what the leadership has said. It's not going to proceed that way.
So are they gonna do the E-Verify? Then what did they do if they catch them, like packing plants and things?
Then the fines are, it's like $300 now. They're gonna go up to $4,000 or $5,000 the first time. So there'll be some real teeth and
When's that gonna start?
Well, it's gonna have to get passed first.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, well, my son is a game warden, and he caught somebody with an expired visa. It was 3 years old, and he called in. They said, "Let him go. There's nothing we can do about it." This is crazy.
Well, at least 40% of the people who are here undocumented right now came into the country legally. And they let their visas expire. They just, which is not a criminal offense. It's a civil. Crossing the border illegally is a misdemeanor. But if you come in illegally and overstay your visa, it's not a criminal offense, so they can't arrest you. Which is, well, and that will be part of anything that we do in the House to make it a criminal offense, so that you can actually have some teeth in the people who purposely overstay their visas.
Okay.
Well, my theory of how to fix this thing was to simply make taxpayer benefits unavailable to illegal aliens. In other words, no free health care, no education. So then they'll self-deport, and we also probably need to fix the way in which they apply for a work visa to come into this country. If we need these people, there should be a legal way for them to come. But I've heard then, oh, well, your idea wasn't so great because there are laws that say they have to be given these benefits.
There is. As far as any hospital that takes any public money at all, by law, has to take everybody.
Legal or illegal. Well, excuse me, all you have to do is look to California and see what's happened there. This is not a good idea.
No, they've got hospitals closing all over the place. I think,
Right.
because there's such a
Well,
unpaid.
okay, here's the
Healthcare.
other thing to make you feel really bad about this. So, we are going to be just like she was saying back there, we get services taken away from us all the time, and it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. But if we were to go to Mexico and come across the border illegally, then then we can have all kinds of health care.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan.
But the trouble is, you'll be arrested when you go into Mexico first, then you'll never get back.
No, if we had immigration laws as tough as Mexico has, how they enforce their laws, you got people from Central America that come into Mexico, and if they're arrested, they're in jail.
They
So-
stay
They
there.
stay there.
Yeah.
They don't get out.
Right.
And that costs thousands and thousands of
But
dollars to do that.
healthcare in Mexico is
Ship them.
fairly inexpensive, I think, and I think there's some areas that provide good health care. So that's when we go to Mexico for health care. Because we can't get it here, but we can go to Mexico and get it. They can't shut off people's ingenuity. People are gonna get creative and find ways around this.
Oh, I agree.
More laws
Yeah,
we have
there's,
than crooks we have.
oftentimes you find in the Washington thought and like the Congressional Budget Office, they never realize they're dealing with human beings that will actually respond one way or another to the situation they're in. Like they're saying, if you raise the income taxes 50%, then it would have no effect on people's activities.
Yeah,
I mean, they say, well, you get a 50% increase in revenue. I'm sorry, but you're gonna have people diverting income and going everywhere in the world. You're gonna have people moving out of the country, you know, all of those things would actually, but they don't realize you're actually governing real people. They think that people are, it's what they call a static model of budgeting that doesn't have any real effect in reality. Yes?
So what motivates you to go back and keep trying? Because
You!
all the Democrats.
You have to be an eternal optimist that, something is going to actually positive happen. But I've said it probably about every meeting that I've had, is that, this district is reflective of the whole country. It's a toss-up district as far as, Republicans, Democrats. The president and I each got about the same number of votes. So how does that happen when a lot of people would perceive a liberal Democrat presidential candidate, conservative Republican congressional candidate, how do they get the same number of votes? And, I think they personally like him, want him to succeed, but they want us to keep an eye on him.
Loves of love.
To stop, right? And, we get in some areas, people talk about Congress as do nothing, that we pass fewer bills or whatever, and a lot of people are very happy about that. They don't want more laws. They don't want more legislation going through. They think we have plenty on the books already, and maybe we should cut back a bunch of.
Are we gonna get a raise in our Medicare?
They will determine, the Medicare board will determine that, according to their formula they have. We do not affect that at all. That's automatic law, permanent law. So the board, they'll take the economic inflation figures, put them together.
All the groceries and gas and that.
Right. Well, they exclude certain things that are such
Find a way around.
as groceries and gas. Some of it, yeah.
Is there anything going to be done about businessmen who've taken businesses overseas and now they want to come back, but the government's going to tax them for the money they made over there rather than let them bring that money back in and start their businesses up here again. Is there anything being done so they can bring that? I mean, they made it over there. Why don't they let them bring that money back here and open up the factories again and get our people back to work? Is there anything being discussed
Right,
on that?
and any quote comprehensive tax reform is gonna include that. And what happens today, if you're a business, and a lot of our corporations are international today.
Yeah,
Even though they may be home based in the US, they have branches all over the world. The way it is today, any income that they earn overseas, they pay tax on it there, and then they try to bring it into the US and they pay 35% again.
yeah.
So what happens, obviously, and again, we're dealing with their corporations run by humans, they decide to leave the money over there, reinvest it there, create jobs overseas. That we're, what we need to do is to lower that so that there's an incentive to bring that money back. There's at least $1.5 trillion in cash sitting overseas today that would come back here if, in fact, that wasn't that tax penalty. And that will be part of any kind of comprehensive tax reform.
Well, and there was also a documentary that I happened to see that there were 14 different college graduates who had visas that were educated in the United States. They all wanted to stay here, but they wouldn't renew their visas, and they all went back home to start businesses wherever. I mean, that is so crazy when these people all of them said they would rather stay in this country
Right.
and start their businesses here. And instead, they take their money and they went back overseas after they were educated here. I mean, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Something should be done about that, I would think.
And it's a huge problem for exactly the point that you made. That will be addressed in any kind of step-by-step approach as far as those type of visas for them to be able to stay here. There are thousands, tens of thousands of openings available right now for engineers, the STEM type curriculums, that a lot of them are now graduate school and foreigners that then go home and compete against us here to try and keep them here. But also along with that, we've got to have a system of, the seasonal workers and things like that. There's about 30–40% of the vegetables in California that are left in the field right now because they don't have enough people to harvest the crop. We've got to address that. And the big question there is, is meat packing, is agricultural, I guess, is that seasonal? Is construction seasonal? Which of the occupations?
Depends on what part of the country you live in.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
But no, that's things that happen, and those I think are going to be the toughest things to resolve in the end.
But some of these people that come in, like from Mexico, they do the work that you and I don't want our kids to have to do. They go out there and sweat, and they're hard workers.
Yeah,
We don't want our kids to have to do it, but who's going to do it?
Yeah.
So it needs to be something done, like you say, for seasonal people. All they want is a better life.
Okay.
You talked about identity theft. How can you stop identity theft and tie it also in with voter ID? I and my wife have had it happen both to us within the last year. Identity theft.
Really?
Yes. $8,000 in Texas earlier this month. Now, how can we stop
On
that?
credit card?
Yes, he's opened up a new credit card in my name.
Do you know how they got your information?
The bank happened to call me, it was a US bank. No idea, but several people from my area has had this happen to them. I went in and saw my local bank about it. He said, you're not the first one, you're like the fifth one that's come in and told us about this.
Wow.
They have no idea.
Well, and there are some businesses that you maybe have used your credit card at that are not good at protecting that information. And there are tens of thousands of cyber attacks every day in checking, probing all the time to see if there's vulnerabilities. in company systems like that. And once they break it in, I mean, you hear about every month or so, you hear a report of, 100,000 people have had their identities exposed or whatever because of some cyber attack or some mess up that the company had as far as, and somehow put it online for people to look. I mean, it's probably what happened. It's where somebody you all did business with had a breach in their security. You're not liable for that. No.
But how can we tie that in with voter ID? If they can do that, why is a voter ID?
Well, what
more
does everybody
rampant
think of
than
a national ID?
I think it's a terrible idea.
Okay. I mean, see, that's,
Don't we have it with Social Security?
no, not like a biometric, type identification or something, but, see, and there's real concern about having the national ID like that, but there are reasons probably to do it. You could actually identify somebody that came in and applied for a job. Right now, the E-Verify system, they can bring you a social security number. The employer will check that in the database and say, yeah, it's a good social security number. But there's no way to verify that that guy applying for the job is who that number belongs to. And the employer has done his due diligence, but the system is not foolproof by any means, and we need to have a system like that that works. But there's real pushback on a lot of quarters from having some kind of a national ID where you can either through fingerprints or iris and all kinds. There's different ways of doing biometrics. Yeah.
Congressman, why in voting, the voter ID issue was brought up, why in voting can we not have a system that provides a concrete auditable trail, similar to that we experience for even low-dollar retail purchases? If we go into a Quick Trip or a dollar store and buy $1.59 worth of anything and pay for it using a credit card or debit card, the machine not only recognizes it electronically, but the cashier gets an auditable source document that they can put in something that their accountants or compliance people can regenerate a paper trail, and the customer gets an exact copy showing exactly the time, the date, and the nature of the product and the price. Why can't we have that same thing when we do arguably the most important task that we have as citizens, voting?
I think maybe some of the concerns you had with the ID would apply there. There's a real concern that people would then know how you voted.
Beyond what we do now?
Well, no, but they would actually have a trail back to your ballot. I mean, you just reverse it once and think about the potential. And that's where the pushback comes. Hey, you don't want people to, you talk about intimidation and things like that could occur.
But it would also eliminate most vote fraud.
Yeah.
Vote count fraud, which I think is an enormously bigger problem than voter perpetrators. I mean, the Secretary of State of Ohio went to prison over massive vote count fraud. It's documented as a huge problem in a lot of places. And I don't hear anybody even talking seriously about doing something.
And a lot of it's for that concern that there is traceability back to a particular ballot.
Well, maybe we could have a PayPal type firewall, third party type, something in a picture that would isolate that or disconnect that information, but still provide an auditable trail.
The way elections are handled traditionally has been a state function, state and local function. I would be somewhat concerned about a major reform that would have the federal government get more involved. I'm not sure what would end up looking like. So I think the emphasis ought to be in the state level. The Secretary of State, with voter ID and all that stuff is I think he's right on target, but I get nervous anytime. I always tell people, be careful what you ask for, you might get it from the federal government. And then see what happens after the fact. Yep. Okay, gang. If there's, thank you very much for coming today. I appreciate it very much. Again, Laura Hartman here, and do you have cards or anything along today? If anybody needs to get a hold of you. We had suspended our monthly visits to every county because of the sequester. That'll get us too for a while, but we are resuming those. So when are you up
I'll be
here?
in Casey this month.
In Casey?
I don't know which day it's
Well,
gonna be,
it'll be
not next
announced.
week, but the week after.
It'll be announced in the
Yeah.
press. Okay. But we have somebody, I've always had somebody in every county every month so that you don't have to drive to our office, that someone is here if you have a problem or concern or some way we can be of assistance for you. Did you have your hand up?
I'm just waiting for.
You were just waving it around. Okay, very good. Well, thank you all very, yes.
Would
Yes,
you
sir.
comment a little more on what you see happening with the Farm Bill? I mean, just continuing resolution
we have a real opportunity, I think, and the speaker, I beat him up over the head all the time on this issue. He wants to get it done, hopefully in September. I heard Steve King on the radio coming in here, he was at the fair, he didn't think it would happen maybe till later this fall as far as the final passage, but we're gonna do, we split the farms title out from the nutrition title so we could pass something. And that actually, we would not have to do nutrition to be able to conference with the Senate as long as an item is in one of the two bills, it's conferenceable. Although we would probably have to recede to the Senate position on nutrition. I'm very hopeful that we can get a new farm bill in place this fall. I'm hoping in September yet, but we'll keep pushing.
You're saying you think that we should split it? Like
It was split.
I know it's
No,
been
I
split.
oppose the idea of splitting it, nutrition and the farm. Now, remember, 20% of the farm bill is actually having to do with
Right.
farms, 80% is feeding programs.
By splitting it, isn't that gonna be the death of the farm bill? In the long run, we might
Well,
pass one today, but what about when it comes up again? How are we ever
It's
gonna
the
pass one
only way
again?
we can move anything. Just telling you, to have any kind of reform on the food stamps, we lost all the people on the other side of the aisle, and because it didn't eliminate the program entirely, we lost about 25 of our people. The only way we can move. We're in a position now, we can conference, bring it back, and I think get bipartisan support, pass it. No, I oppose the idea of splitting it. We should have probably made some changes. We would have gotten some support across the aisle. But we're only talking about changing eligibility slightly. I mean, it has been so greatly expanded since the stimulus. You've got 19 states today that have heard of the LIHEAP program, Low Income Energy Assistance Program, for low-income folks to help pay their heat bills in the wintertime, basically. States will purposely send them $1 a month. That way, they're automatically enrolled in food stamps. And the state then gets a lot more money into the state, flowing into the state. Just by raising that from $1 to a minimum of $20 for automatic enrollment, it would save about $8 billion. It's just to have some modest reform that people would not be trying to just abuse the system. And it's not individuals necessarily, it's a lot of the people, stakeholders of states that are purposely doing it. So,
That's one of the things that we have to change is the handout system that we have set up for ourselves. I'm all for helping somebody when they're down and out, but this business of just handing money out is.
We've gone, what, about 30 million on food stamps to about 47, 48 million people today.
But creating multi-generational dependencies is not helping people.
Well, it's even like those Obama phones. That's just, I think, been wasting money.
Can't we cut these things out? I mean, how'd that get passed?
And it actually goes back before Obama even with the, that was it was supposed to be a very small, limited program to the neediest people, disabled people, things like that did not have mobility.
Kind of like the
It's like something that started
Started with landlines and moved to cell phones.
I've had 2 instances of people they're on assistance for medical reasons, or, they have problems, okay. They're still, and so they're getting assistance, so the spouse or the boyfriend or girlfriend all at once, there's a program out there, they can quit their jobs and sign up as caretakers. How ludicrous. So now we're paying 2 people in that household instead of 1. And in both cases, that person had a legitimate job, but they were able to quit the job and sign up as being caretakers.
Laura's back here shaking her head, yes, that's right.
Yeah, when I worked in healthcare,
Okay.
that's what, yeah.
I mean, I just so perturbed. I have some rental houses. I just so angry anymore, I can't see straight. People call me up and they want to know, of course, how many bedrooms it is. Then they want to know, well, how many bathrooms? And long story short, the last question is, are you HUD approved? Why would HUD, which is you and me, give somebody a house with more than 1 bathroom? I don't have one. Why should HUD authorize anybody living in a facility like that? But they do.
Oh, yeah.
The people who depend on you, Gene, need to, or want to live better than you do. Drive a nicer car, have a better phone.
That's fine all the time.
Very good, we can just.
That's fine all the time.
Yeah, I've got to get to another meeting too, so anyway, thank you all very, very much for coming. Please stay in touch, okay?